Hey, welcome back to the Rock Fantasy YouTube channel. I'm sitting here on a Friday morning at the Rock Fantasy, getting ready to start the day. Thought I'd drop in and talk to everybody about my winter spring concert blitz or concert roundup. I was honored and blessed to go to a bunch of shows this season. As I'm taping this, it's June 20th. I'm actually seeing a band tonight in Middletown. It was a tribute band, a cover band, Wrathchild, the Iron Maiden tribute, over at the Zone. So I'll be going to one more show tonight. We'll start that off with that. But as I go back in time in the last couple of months, it all started with seeing Kashmir, the Led Zeppelin tribute here in Middletown at the historic Paramount Theater. It was a Diamond Grade Entertainment production, and I was lucky enough to sit down and interview them, a couple of the members from the band, on the YouTube channel. And I'm good friends with David Blamfeed, who plays as a drummer in the band. He was in Zepp again back in the day, who I used to see in Middletown. And they dropped by the store, and it was a really good show. They actually did the whole Physical Graffiti album during the night, scattered through the set. And that was on, I didn't write the date down. I think it was February 1st. So then, with a few days off, I traveled to New York City for the first time since last fall to the Gramercy Theater, which will be the first of many adventures down there. It was seeing Decapitated, Incantation, Darkest Hour, and Ex Mortis, because I went down to support Incantation and see John McAtee, who I interviewed on the channel that night, and we were hanging out. I was a little taken back at first because Decapitated came on stage, and I did not even realize that their singer had changed since last year when I saw them. Different experience. It was still a good band. They were still great, but I did miss the presence of their former singer. Then a few days later, it was actually Valentine's Day, I traveled to a new venue that, for me at least, in Bensalem, PA, about an hour north of Philly, the Broken Goblet. It's brewery, and I got to see Tyr with Either Realm open up, and I did the meet and greet. And Tyr is a folk metal band from the Faroe Islands, and they hadn't seen them since before the pandemic, so made sure that was on my radar. Could not see them in Brooklyn because I would think working here at the shop. Then I was back to New York City to the Gramercy Theater, which it seems like I did a residency there a little bit this year, to catch Swallow the Sun, who was in support of their Shining album, and Carry for the Sky was the main support act. And I was told by a couple friends before I even attended that they were going for Carry for the Sky. And wow, they were great. Amazing. I think I'll put the album on after I get done taping today and start off a Friday here. They were great. Of course, I really like Swallow the Sun. Hadn't seen them in a few years either. Ghost Bath was a support band, and Snakes of Russia, which was kind of like a DJ. And that was, I may have already said, February 24th. Then about a week later, I was originally going to just one of these shows, but was talked into going to both. I went up to the Empire Live in Albany, New York, to check out Septic Flesh and Viltness and Storm Ruler, who were added to the tour. They're an American black metal band, and they were very good. They replaced XDO because XDO could not get work visas to get into the States. And that was March 1st in Albany, New York. And then the second day I came back home, packed up the car, and drove down to the Gramercy once again to check out the same tour. I'm a big fan of Septic Flesh, and they did not disappoint. Of course, Viltness was there. I got to catch up with David Vincent a couple times. He did an in-store here with Morbid Angel back in the 90s. And Storm Ruler, I bought some vinyl from Storm Ruler, actually. So that was Sunday, March 2nd. March 7th, I continued a working relationship I have with the local Paramount Theater, which is right, if you've ever been to Rock Fantasy, it's right around the block. You can walk there in 2 minutes. The brewery Equilibrium is between us. And interviewed the band Tusk, who a Fleetwood Mac tribute, and they were It was an amazing set of Fleetwood Mac music, and that was right around the corner at the Paramount. And then moving on to the next one, Thursday, March 20th, I paid a visit to a new venue in Queens, New York to catch a rare U.S. performance by the Irish metal band Primordial. And they were supported by Sonya and The Watcher. But wow, Primordial are excellent. I hadn't seen Primordial probably since maybe the late 2000s, and I saw them with on a pagan festival things, and that was the first time they ever came over. It was the first time I saw Corpaclani too. Mention that to them that I saw that tour. My memory deceives me if I've seen them since. If I don't really think I have, but they were talking about that tour. It was one of the first times they've come to the States. So that was a great night. 3 nights later, I returned to the Gramercy Theater to catch Delane and Exandria and Edge of Paradise, and I interviewed the lead vocalist from Edge of Paradise on the channel a few weeks before. Delane were great. Delane is from the Netherlands, and Exandria is from Germany. It's a night of symphonic metal, female-fronted for the most part. So I attended that. It was a good show, a lot of energy. And the next night, I went back to New York City, down a couple blocks from the Gramercy to the Irving Plaza. It was my only visit to the Irving Plaza this year. It was the Decibel Magazine tour, which had Mayhem headlining. They were performing their 40th anniversary set. Opening support acts were Mortis from Emperor, of course, with his kind of keyboard-oriented event set. I was never really a big fan of that, and I found it a little dull that night too. Not a giant fan. Some people are, of course. Imperial Triumphant. I interviewed Josh on the channel, and they were good, and they're very interesting. They put out a new album, Gold Star, and I recommend that album. They dress in gold masks, and they have like an avant-garde. They talk a lot about society, and a lot of things are based on architecture in New York City. And Skeletal Faces was a warmer back. So I really enjoyed Imperial Triumphant, but Mayhem were amazing that night. They had screens up and completely started with the newest album to 2 tracks, went back doing 2 tracks from each album, and then ending with the early stuff. And they even had a song where they had Dead come on and sing the vocals on a song from De Mysteriis Dom Satanis. And of course, it was just a good night of metal in New York City again. And let me see where I caught up. On March 29th, completely switched gears, was back up here at the Paramount Theater and interviewed these guys also on the channel around that time. The McCartney years were in town. It was a total recreation of Paul McCartney and Wings from the mid-70s. And interviewed them, and then I saw the first set of that, and then I left and went over to WXAX Metal Night, because I also interviewed another band out of the Philadelphia area, which originally from Vegas, Denim and Leather, were at the Zone that night, and they do a great early 80s metal like tribute. So they were doing Accept and everything else. So I did a doubleheader that night here in Middletown, some classic rock and some metal. And then we headed over on the next night. I went back to Brooklyn, my first visit to the Brooklyn Monarch of the year. And it was Folk Fest of the North tour with Corpaclani and Sephirim, who was one of my favorite bands, and Trollfest, who were just amazing also. And Ninny was the opening act. And it was probably the biggest party that I've been to this year. Everyone is having fun. There's a lot of songs about drinking with Trollfest, and also with Corpaclani. Corpaclani, some of the songs are not in English, but Trollfest, they had conga lines. There were people, they were dressed as flamingos. Was just a crazy event. And then Sephirim, who was more of a folk Viking metal band, was the middle support act between, I guess, co-headline with Corporate Kalani, and the crowd was just, everyone was just in a great spirit. So, and if I'm ever feeling down, I'll go back to March 24th because that was just a great night. Saturday, April 5th, I'm back in Middletown over at the Zone at Clemson. I organized a food drive for the local soup kitchen, and we had Into the Void, who are the best of Black Sabbath, of course. John Brulo on vocals, Tom McCap, who was a regular on the program on the YouTube channel, is the drummer. He was in Sabracadabra years ago, and these guys had it down. Was just them, no opening act. I brought some stage lights over. We had a really good turnout. PDH got involved with the promotion due to the food bank, and had a lot of people come out. Had people from the food bank there who were thanking us for doing it, and made it a success. So Into the Void, we'll talk more about them in this list too. April 13th, just a few days later, about a week later, I was back at the Gramercy, my old stomping grounds for this year. And of course, I've been going to the Gramercy for shows for years. I really love the venue because you got great sight lines wherever you're out there. I usually buy a ticket that's up on a ledge on the very actual left of the stage, where you get a seat and like a bar stool there, and you can get really good footage and clips or pictures and just really be part of the show. But this one was a band that I've been following for years. It was originally supposed to do their first ever appearance here in Middletown. Austria's Belphegor were the headliners, and Russia's Arcona were on board too. And I first heard about this, I was like, wow, how does Arcona even get into the States? I'm not sure if they still reside in Russia, with, of course, all the conflicts going on and whatever else between the countries. But Arcona were there. And at first, I didn't even think they fit on this bill with the heavy blackened death metal of Belphegor, because Arcona used to be more of a real folk metal band, and they used to bring out they perform in Slavic, and they used to bring out some primeval like instruments to play, but now they've turned more of like a really metal, like a blackened metal. And Masha Scream is definitely one of the most extreme vocalists in the game, male or female, and one of the strongest female vocalists out there. So I really enjoyed Arcona's set. Vela Panath was the support act. Hate from Poland were supposed to be on the tour. Visa problems with them also, so they did not make it. April 15th, Tax Day, we turned around and completely switched gears. Frank had bought tickets from here, that works for me, Frank Greco, and we went to Montclair, the Wellmont in Montclair, to see Spirit Box. And there were some opening acts, and I didn't jot them down, but packed house. Spirit Box is kind of like a new metal, I guess, band, female fronted by Courtney, who was in I Wrestled a Bear once, and she's got great vocal range. And I saw them last year a couple times on the Korn Gojira, where I got the Gojira hat on right now. I got to see that tour a couple times last year. And the first time I ever saw Spirit Box was actually just coming out of COVID. I didn't go to shows for a couple of years. That was the first show I ever saw inside UBS Arena and down where the Islanders skate, and that was Ghost Mastodon Spirit Box. So Spirit Box was the first band I ever saw coming out of the plague. So got to see them on the 15th. April 26th, I held the Rock Fantasy 39th anniversary with Damage Incorporated, the Metallica tribute. Originally, they were co-headlining with Show No Mercy, the Slayer tribute, but the guitar player from Show No Mercy hurt his hand and then could not perform. So we actually had a couple of my great customers and fans were at the Into the Void show and said, why don't you reach out to Into the Void, see if they can fill it? And I'm like, why not? Black Sabbath on an anniversary would be great. So Into the Void did fill in, and they had a guest vocalist, Steven, who was a vocalist from Sabbath Superstars, Land of Oz, and also is in a Dio tribute too. Stepped in. He's from down the Philadelphia area. So they performed with a guest vocalist, and Same guys that play in Into the Void are doing some gigs this summer as Sabbath Superstars. And Final Siege was, we had a bunch of original bands too. It wasn't just tribute bands. Final Siege were there with Gil from Show No Mercy. And he learned to play a couple of, he's a vocalist of the Show No Mercy band too, but he plays guitar and sings in Final Siege. So he actually learned to play a couple of the songs. And Billy from Show No Mercy got up and did a little Slayer set, which was great. Firehaze were there. Firehaze is competing this week to win a trip to Wacken to perform at the Wacken Festival. And they always bring a great performance, and I've used them a couple times in a row now at anniversary shows. Spellbook took the ride up from York, PA. Check out Spellbook. They put a whole different flavor on the show because they were more of like a stoner 70s band, but with really great stage presence and great sound. A lot of people were won over by them. Another Demon was there. They provided the backline for us all day, which thank you so much. And Primeval Tribulation, which Andy Eichhorn has under the Demon as the backing band. So he got up and did a Primeval set. Originally we had Militia on, but they had some problems, health issues with the band. We were trying to get a Militia reunion, which was a local band that had a lot of notoriety here in the late 80s in Middletown, but they didn't make it. We had Sick Bay, long-time death metal, deathcore band from the Hudson Valley, as one of the bands on it. And opening up the night was Brutality. They're two brothers, three-piece band that are really tight, and they play like a groove thrash metal. Young kids. They play all over the U.S. and even into Mexico, so check out Brutality. Thursday, May 1st, I attended the first 2 dates of the 2025 Chaos and Carnage tour, featuring Dying Fetus, Cradle of Filth, Flesh God Apocalypse, and Nea Obliviscaris, Undeath, Vomit Forth, and Corpse Pile. A lot of bands, right? This was at the Palladium, the former Best Buy, former PlayStation Theater in New York City. Great performances by everyone. Nea Obliviscaris, I feel, may have stole the show. Flesh God Apocalypse were on fire. And Cradle of Filth, who I hadn't seen in probably 15 years, also put on a great performance. And I actually been digging the latest release by them. And Dying Fetus, of course, great death metal. And I was pretty wiped out by Dying Fetus came on. I went up and sat in the back for a little bit because I had a couple beers and it was a long day. And next morning, I actually got up. I slept about 4 hours, drove to Allentown, PA, to the Pin Festival, and brought a pinball machine to put on the floor for free play. Then realized that the Chaos and Carnage Fest was about 45 minutes from there on Saturday. First, I'm a little hungover. I'm like, I'm not doing that. But then woke up Saturday morning and decided to take the ride down to Reverb. And actually, when I first looked at it, I was like, wow, this show starts at noon. But why it started at noon was they added a few local bands from that area of like hardcore and death metal bands that were playing. And the place was absolutely packed. It was like a very hot summer day outside, packed in there. We got into the venue. They let us in, and for the 4 o'clock, they started a little earlier than they did the Palladium. But I caught the 90% of the set. I did leave during the Cradle of Filth because it was a long ride home. I was exhausted, and I drove in a pouring downpour of thunderstorms for like 3 hours heading home. But then Tuesday, I didn't get much time to rest because I went back to TVI. The second time I've been at the club in Queens. It's like, it reminds me a little bit of St. Vitus, especially the room where the stage is. But they do have a bar room in the front of it and a lounge where you can get tables, and they have a picnic area outside, kind of like Monarch does. And I got to see a first ever New York City appearance from Hungarian black metal pioneers, Tormentor, which of course features Attila Caesar on vocals. Support came from Manet and Blackhurst, and I actually got there very early because I always like to find a place to park. And I got a nice place to park out front. Walked out by the picnic tables and checked in with home to see everything was going on. And I looked over at the picnic table and I'm like, oh, that's got to be Tormentor sitting there, because I noticed Attila. So I didn't go up to them or approach them. But then I walked back inside Figured, what the heck, I'll get a beer, and came back out and was walking over by them, and Attila actually got up and said, "Hey, how are you?" He thought I was someone else. He thought that I was a tour manager or someone to do with the show. But I just exchanged pleasantries with him and took a photo. And what a great show they were that night. So heavy, so tight, really good. A week later, I'm back at the Gramercy for Norway's Enslaved, and they were just freaking amazing. And they only did a 3-date North American tour. They played Montreal, they played New York City, and then they went out to Milwaukee, and that was it. So, short tour for Enslaved, but wow. I just remember how great they are and going to see them and how amazing that band is. And winding down now, I went to, on about 2 weeks later, I went for my first ever trip to the Maryland Deathfest in Baltimore, Maryland. It was a picture perfect day. I drove down. It's about a 4-hour ride. Got there around 12 noon, a little, maybe 11, a little before doors opened. And actually, the first band went on at 2, was Shed the Skin. Then I got to see Centipath from Mexico. There's a couple Centipaths out there. They were the Mexican death metal veterans, and they played. And then it was followed by the Brazilian brothers, Crisian, performing Carkers of Armageddon in its entirety. Then Incantation performed Onward to Golgotha in its entirety. Then we had a set from Nile, which was not a certain album. They went a little late. Their set got cut a little short. Then hit the stage, followed by Dark Funeral from Sweden. And it was just a killer lineup. It made me want to go. Everything fell into place because the weather was nice. I've never been to MDF. Ran into some friends there. Bought some patches. Made some connections. And then I walked over. It's like 2 city blocks, right? The one stage where I saw everything in the afternoon. And then if you walked across, you had to go across the street. And then if you walked over by the old sound stage, I think it was Ram's Head actually on that side, Unleashed played. And I got to check them out for a bit. And then I wrapped up the night by going back across the street to see Triptychon, who was performing a Celtic Frost set. Of course, Tom G. Warrior. Reed St. Mark was in attendance that day. He did not perform with the band, but he was there. There's a couple of guys that were in Celtic Frost were at the event. And I really want to support Incantation and Crisian because I'm good friends with them. Of course, John has done so much for this channel, and I wanted to come down, and I was going to surprise him, but then I was like, John, where's a good place to stay? And I actually stayed at the same hotel where they would by the airport, and he knew I was coming, and Moses and them, Moses and Alex and the guys from Crisian, it was great to run into them. And it was just a good day in Baltimore. I don't know if I'll go back every year because of scheduling and things I have to do with running the shop, but it was nice to say I finally attended an MDF. I wrapped up my spring blitz doing stage lights for the Long Island based all-female Motley Crue tribute Red Hot last Saturday at the Zone. And that was fun. They did well. I had a good crowd. And so, like I said, tonight I'm wrapping things up with Wrathchild over at the Zone. And was going to bring some lights, but I don't think I need to. They said they're going to have some. So I have some stage lights now. But I'd like to thank everyone that's still watching. If you watch the whole video, comment, man, because a lot of people don't watch the whole videos. And please, if you guys have hit some of the same shows I was at, comment on it. And or if you hit some of these tours that traveled around the country and you saw the tour somewhere else, make that in a comment. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, please. We've got over 5,000 subscribers, but hey, if that takes a second to hit subscribe, and you'll get to see what we're doing. This week we're going to come back. On Wednesday, we're going to talk about our favorite releases from 2005. 20 years ago already. So 20th anniversaries and what your favorite albums from 2005 were. So I would thank you for watching. I got my Iron Maiden Book of Souls shirt on. I'm ready for tonight, ready for some Maiden. And I will see you next time on the Rock Fantasy Files. Bang!